have the main engineer here, and that's what he's doing.
Obviously aren't talking about me.
Well, I wouldn't, surely wouldn't be talking about me.
Surely.
That baptistry looks so nice in the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, it's really pretty.
So how to handle life's interruptions is something that we've been talking about this whole section. So the first one was God interrupts your life. The second one last week was when life goes terribly wrong. And today is when your actions cause an interruption. Now, we all know that there's no way that we would cause interruptions to our own life. It's not like that would ever happen.
What I really like is the point. God can redeem my mistakes.
Yep, he can redeem our mistakes. Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because we don't even fully understand that concept because, okay, it says here in Life's Connection, we are sinners, but God redeems us in Christ even when we fail. God does not leave us in our failure. The wonder and beauty of God is seen in how he redeems us, even using our past experiences to further accomplish his purpose through us. We may falter, but in his faithful love, God does not abandon us. And it's so important. Bad choices usually have bad consequences. Fortunately, that's not the end of the story for believers. Now, you see the picture there of the washing machine with too much soap and it's just bubbling all over the place. That would get your attention, right? That's a bad mistake. But even something like that could lead to a positive. Now, you don't think about it in the moment when something happens like that, but it could lead to a positive. We don't always know. But if we believe that God guides our feet to bring us to certain things, there are going to be situations like this that bring people into our lives that God can use that interaction. Sometimes we don't know. And God can redeem our mistakes. And it says here, chance encounters. Made a left turn when I should have made a right turn. Sometimes when you're using your GPS and it says, turn right.
Yeah.
And you look and you're like, there's more than one right? Or there's no right. And because it used to be a right, but it's not there anymore. So I can't make that right. But those are things that happen. And they can lead to interesting interactions. Stood in a long line, only discovered 30 minutes later you were in the wrong line. I've done that before. You go, you think you're in the right line, you get up there, oh, sorry, sir, you need to go over there, and it's a longer line.
Yeah. And it's a good story, though, after that.
Yes, James Chadwick.
Because that was very interesting, and that,
Imagine you're going to sign up for mathematics, and you're in the physics line, you don't realize it until you get there. But once you get there, someone makes a good impression on you. They're Dr. Ernest Rutherford, and that chance encounter turns into a lifelong friendship, partnership, and then leads on, as it says, to discovery of neutrons and other scientific events. I was tired of traveling, so I went to my contract company and said, look, I would really like to get a position that doesn't travel. I'm done. I've traveled all over the world. I've spent time. I just want to be at home. So they take me and I do an interview with the guy, and they take me to this network operations center, and I go there. The very first day, I call Lily up and says, if I quit, I we gonna be all right? Can we find something else? Because I got there at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that was the first time I got to even breathe, to get off the phones, to do anything.
Wow.
And then I was like, Lord, should I leave or should I stay? I came back the next day, and I've been there since 2008 in different capacities. So you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Same kind of thing happened to me when I went to work for Z. My first day was so bad that they asked me if I was coming back the next day when I left.
Wow.
And 39 years later, I retired from there. So.
And you just don't know,
Yeah.
right? You just
Yeah.
don't know how those things
Absolutely.
play out and what God's, and you know, when I stop and I look at it, right? Yes, I was in that point where I was like, oh, no. And see, when I went there, they didn't tell me, number one, that this wasn't their normal level of calls and stuff like that this was a particular event that was going on. Number two, no one helped me. The people that were supposed to have answers and help me get through answering the problems and fixing the situations were almost non-existent. And I noticed after the second or third day that people were watching, and when I'd go to pick up the phone, they'd pretend and they'd pull back. So I ended up answering the majority of the calls.
Uh-huh.
If I wasn't on a call, they would wait.
Yeah.
And then I'd pick the calls up and they'd go, oh, okay. So I got wise to that after a while, but it didn't matter a bit to me because answering the calls kept things moving along. The day would go faster that way. But when you think in terms of that, well, first of all, because I took that job when my brother had cancer, there were multiple times when I was able to go to the hospital. Hey, I've got a situation. Okay, go ahead and go take care of that. When Christian was in the hospital getting his heart transplant and the recovery, I was able to leave the hospital and go to work, go home, take a shower, and then stay with him overnight at the hospital. And if things got out of whack, I could work remotely.
Oh.
These are all things that they let me do that wouldn't have been available to me had I gone to some of the other
Right.
places. So even though it was that initial but it was an interruption that, you know, it was an interruption that I created because I said, I don't want to travel,
Yeah.
right? I traveled enough. And so you go through those moments in time where you create a interruption. I got 2 car accidents and was fired and had to go find another job.
Had you stayed with the traveling job, though, you wouldn't have been able to do with your son and all that other
Exactly.
stuff. So it worked out.
Exactly.
It worked out, yeah.
It worked out, but I wouldn't have even known. Like, you know,
Right.
to think about my brother having cancer, to think about Christian, those were things far beyond what God knew.
He knew it, yes.
God knew,
Yes, he
and
did.
so he was able to say, hey, I've put this on your heart, you need to stop traveling. I'm not going to tell you why, but you need to stop
Yeah,
traveling.
there you go.
You know, I need for you to look at this. Okay, so we don't always know.
No.
And those interruptions that we create, that sounds like, well, yeah, but we do those things. How many times have we made decisions or committed sin that has changed the nature? You know, the person who says, well, 2 beers, I'm not going to be, and they get pulled over and their breathalyzer pops and they're in trouble. They made the decision, poor decision, but they made the decision to drink and drive. Bad decision. And when we think in terms of those bad choices that we make, how many people who are believers have walked down the path and put themselves into situations that were compromising? I think it was Lily was looking at something, and they said that in the early days of it may not be the early days, but you know how you have lobbyists take politicians,
Mhm.
that there was a lot of lobbyists that would pay to send politicians to other countries on vacation, and then they would try to get compromising information on them and suggest to them, well, why don't you do this? You're all the way over here on the other side of the world.
Yes.
Who would know? And then they fall for it, and now when they come back to Washington, hey, so we need for you to sponsor this bill. That bill's really not,
Yeah.
well, it would really be a shame if what you did in so-so place would come to light. Okay, I'll sponsor it.
Yep.
Without even thinking about who they are, right? Because it could happen to anyone. But they put themselves in a bad spot, and they did not test it. Because we have to test situations. If you know it's against God's will, don't let yourself, no matter where you're at, don't let yourself fall for that. Because if it's sin here,
Yeah.
it's sin over there,
Yeah.
you know? And so we have to be careful.
Some of the last lessons we did were talking about building character and stuff like that.
Character.
You should have the same character wherever you are.
And that is, character. Character, having character.
And God always knows.
Yes.
So, I mean, you could say, well, nobody will know, but yes, God knows.
Yes,
Always,
absolutely,
everything.
absolutely. And it's not only that, that is, if the Bible tells us, it does, that everything we do, we're supposed to do it to God, then wherever I am, I'm doing everything I do to God. I already know I'm going to falter. I already know that I'm going to fail. But why put yourself in a position where you think that somehow
Yeah.
you can have this activity or do this thing and God's not going to know?
We're going to make mistakes, but we don't need to do it on purpose.
Right.
What is it? What are we told? We're told, should we sin that grace may abound? Right? God's grace is sufficient in any situation.
Right.
But we should not think that by deliberately sinning that we're going to get more grace and it's worth it because, I'm getting more grace. That's not how it is, because that's damaging your relationship. If someone does something that compromises your trust with them,
It's hard
they have to
rebuild.
work, right? They have to work to rebuild it. And so then to rebuild your trust takes so much more effort that it becomes that much more difficult. Mike, you want to read Exodus chapter 2, verse 11 through 15? Or will you? I don't know if you want to.
One day Moses, now a grown man, went out among his Hebrew relatives and realized the severity of their bondage. He happened to witness an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. So he looked around, and when he thought no one was watching, he killed the Egyptian and covered the body in the sand. The next day Moses once again went out among the Hebrews and happened to see two Hebrew men fighting. So he said to the one who was in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man replied, "Who made you prince and judge over us? Are you going to kill me like you did the Egyptian?" Moses was suddenly overcome by fear, for he thought, obviously what I did is no secret. When Pharaoh found out about it, he sought to have Moses put to death, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and found refuge in the land of Midian. Upon arriving, he sat down beside a well to rest.
Okay. So here, Moses has been saved. He's raised by Pharaoh's daughter. He's a grown man, and he goes out and about. And he understands that he is a Hebrew, an Israelite. And he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and it just affects him. It makes him angry. But instead of talking with the Egyptian or interacting with the Egyptian, what does he do? He kills him. Not necessarily the right course of action. right? But as a young man, he was so angry in this situation that he allowed emotion versus wisdom to prevail. And the emotion, he grabbed the man, and odds are, you've seen the Moses movies and all that stuff, right? And he grabs him and throws him aside or pushes him aside. Sometimes those things, your intention wasn't to kill them.
Yeah.
Your intention was to get them off the other person, but the way you did it, it was such anger and such power that you led to the death. Now, nothing here indicates that he didn't intend to kill him. So we understand that Moses killed him. He was very angry and he killed him. And in doing so, he thought, yay, I've freed my brothers from oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes back and his brothers, the Hebrews, are like, who put you over us? What makes you? Because as far as they're concerned, he's an Egyptian. And then, of course, what happens? It comes to his thought, wow, even though no one saw it, everybody saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Pharaoh must know, I got to go. So he goes on the run. He's on the lam, as they say, right? He's on the lam. He's running. And where does he go? To Midian. And he sits down by a well. Now, decisions. That's a very, very scary thing, because here he was technically part of Egyptian nobility.
Mm-hmm.
He was a member of the royal family, and he has just killed an Egyptian. And worse than that, he killed the Egyptian in defending a Hebrew slave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not a good look, as they say, right?
From where we're standing, there's no way out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. He knows that by killing him, and for the purpose that he killed him, he's going to pay a price.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, by the way, Pharaoh knows that he's a Hebrew that his daughter raised.
Mm-hmm.
So
He's illegitimately there to start with.
he's not blood child.
Right.
He's not my grandchild by blood, by birth. He's my grandchild because my daughter raised him.
And it came in my mind, a little mind I got left. It said he fled. Now, Pharaoh knew everything about that whole area. That was a miracle that he got away from there, and Pharaoh didn't get him.
Absolutely.
That was an act of God right there.
Absolutely, because even though he went to the land of Midian to dwell, just getting out of Egypt,
Yeah.
right? Just
Yeah,
getting
right.
out of Egypt.
Just getting out of Plant City would be bad.
Yeah, no. So imagine the king of Hillsborough County
Yeah,
knew that you had conducted something, and you had to get to Polk County,
yeah.
and you were here in this part of Plant City. You still got a ways to go.
Brady Judd would have found you right
He
away.
would have found you and brought you back. But
Yeah, that was,
But understanding that, then on top of that, he made it and sat down by a well. He got away, and he got to a well so he could get some drink, and just, okay, I'm gonna relax here. No one's following me. Let me just take a break. Okay? Oh, absolutely, by the grace of God, and not just by the grace of God, but God putting him in a place where he wanted him.
Yep.
Because right now, you, Moses, are not ready to lead my people out of Egypt. So we're gonna get you out of there, and now we're gonna hold pat.
And there was an interesting remark made in there that you don't normally think about. He left with the clothes on his back. He didn't have anything. He didn't have a suitcase.
No, he ran.
Yeah.
At the moment he realized. So imagine that. He's killed the guy, and he's covered him in sand.
Yeah.
And it's the second day. Now he has to have been, from the moment he killed him to this point, he's got to be like, I wonder if anybody knows.
Right.
But at the point he runs into these Hebrews, and the way that the Hebrew mentioned it makes you say, I'm not the only one that knows.
Right.
And he
right.
didn't go there planning to run, so he truly had nothing but whatever he
Sure.
walked into that with.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the
Yeah.
fact that he felt, oh my, this is known by other people. He ran. Now, odds are that as we hear, now when Pharaoh heard, he was already pretty much either close to being out of Egypt, or because, the reason I say that is because knowing Pharaoh and knowing the power of a Pharaoh or a king, he would have had people out, soldiers out. So he had to be far enough away that Pharaoh's ability to get people out was going to be just behind.
Yes, yeah.
And so he does get out, and he gets to Midian, and he sits down by the well. It says in your book, it talks about, says, have you ever shaked your head at foolish decisions, right? This was a foolish decision for Moses to kill this Egyptian, because something's going to happen. Pharaoh is not just going to let it go. So, it says here in 1938, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel sold their rights for a comic book character they invented for $130. The character's name was Superman. They needed the money, they sold it. $130 was probably not bad. But imagine how much money the comic Superman, movie Superman, merchandise Superman has sold over the years.
Some of those comic books are selling for over $1,000 a piece
Now.
right now. My son-in-law collects them.
But in 1938, they sold it for $130, and they came up with the idea. Then it says, in 1955, Sam Phillips sold his exclusive contract with a young singer named Elvis Presley to RCA Victory Records, forfeiting royalties. That cost him $1 or $2.
Yep.
Foolish decisions. And then it says in our text, Moses killed the Egyptian and then tried to cover it up. I don't know, Moses was thinking, I'm doing the right thing because this Egyptian is beating
Yeah.
my brothers. But it never crossed his mind that this does two things. One, it hardens Pharaoh's heart against the Hebrews, so he's going to mistreat them more. And you no longer have a say in trying to change things because you've been thrown out, you've had to run, and so you no longer have a voice to try to help. And so he's put himself in a bad situation. So when we think in terms of those kinds of things, we have to understand Moses took matters into his own hands, failed, and had to run for his life. Him killing one Egyptian did not fix the plight of the Hebrews. Yet, because of what he did, he had to depart. Now, fortunately, God had a plan.
I'm just thinking about that. What part of this God allowed to serve his plan? God got it. He needed him out of Egypt, of course. But God could have done it some other way. But
He could have left him in place to have the ear of Pharaoh, and if that's how he wanted to do it. But God knew the situation. He knew the heart of this Pharaoh, because it says Pharaoh died and he returned. So this would have been another Pharaoh that he was dealing with when he was trying to get the children of Israel out.
The scriptures we're reading today don't mention it, but Moses was 40 years old when he slew the Egyptian. He went into the wilderness and settled down there shepherding the sheep for 40 years. And at the end of that 40 years, God called him back to Egypt, and he led the children of Israel for 40 more years. So he was 120 when he passed away, according to the Bible.
And had he not listened to the people, they would have been in the promised land.
Oh, yeah.
But he had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years and then passed
Oh, yeah.
just before God led them into the promise. And then of course he turns it over to Joshua, right? So, but how many times have you found yourself in a situation and you've made a decision that turns out to be a foolish decision,
Oh, yeah.
and because of that, God, directs you. Many years ago, when Lily got pregnancy test the second time that she was pregnant after she'd lost the baby, I went and told her and I walked into her boss's office and she needs to take 2 weeks vacation because it's going to be 2 weeks before we can get her to a doctor to make sure this pregnancy is stable. This boss had no understanding of what had happened to us before, where the stress of all the things had left us. Well, we made the mistake of dealing with her boss, and her boss says, no, I'm not. No. Okay, well, then she's quitting. Here's the resignation letter. Right? We probably should have gone to HR because the HR lady was well aware of the previous situation, but I think we made a foolish decision in that time. It's fine, no big deal. But there are things that you do out of, I know that this is right, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then you find out, maybe it wasn't the right choice. Those are things that happen in life. And God here allowed him to run away. And then what do we see? Manette, can you read 16 through 22?
Now the priests of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, how is it that you are come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, and where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land.
Okay. The Israelites were also in harsh circumstances, but God had not forgotten them. It says here, test number 1, life in the wilderness. Moses traveled about 300 miles to a place where he could disappear, the remote wasteland of Midian. Moses would lead Israel through this very terrain 40 years later. But first, he must follow the Lord in his own personal exodus, away from idols, like the good life in Egypt, and his own self-sufficiency, to trust in the Lord in identification with his people Israel. So, 300 miles away, okay? That's how far he had to go out, and Pharaoh was probably thinking, oh, he went out to the wilderness. He may not even make it. So why do I have to chase him down? The wild animals, the bandits, the whatever.
Right, because he'd been raised in luxury. He wasn't used to being out in the wilderness.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He had everything he wanted.
Right.
Now, this also points back to the fact that at this point, Moses is not truly understanding who the God of Israel is.
Right.
He's been trained and he's experienced the gods of Egypt, and so he's loyal to Egypt in some aspects, but he knew who he was. And then it says, starting family, after helping 7 sisters water their flock, Moses was invited to dinner and into their family. He worked as a shepherd, bringing humility, since Egyptians despised the lowly work. Being a shepherd, a tender of sheep, is always kind of looked down on, dirty job, right? Number one, sheep aren't exactly the brightest animals in the world, right?
Mm.
And so it's a hard work. Secondly, if you're hanging out with sheep, you're gonna smell like them. You're getting, you go to a farm and there's a certain smell in a farm. If you're not used to a farm, it's totally different than being in your nice air-conditioned apartment or house or whatever. To be out there sweating and the animals and it's just not the same.
And if you're at the farm, there's usually a place to take a bath, even if it's a wash tub. But out in the desert like that with the sheep, you can't even take a shower, I mean, yeah.
Well, and when you're out there like that, when you find water, it's to ingest it, to water the sheep or whatever.
Right.
It's not for bathing, it's for survival. So these are all things that play into this role. And as Manette said, if he was a soft, royal, he needed to be affected by this. He needed to see this.
Right.
And understand what it was.
This is part of his training.
This is part of his training. He understood God had taken him to a place where he would take the children of Israel later.
Yep.
So he needed to understand the terrain.
Right.
He needed to understand the pitfalls. He needed to be developed. God was providing him on-the-job training.
And dealing with the sheep taught him to deal with people, although the sheep don't talk back.
But how many times do they wander off on their own?
Right, exactly.
That kind of thing is the shepherd leaves his 99 to go find the one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, and sheep don't wander off because they're like, I'm mad, I'm going over here. No, they usually just kind of wander off because they're, oh,
Yeah.
hey, where'd everybody go?
The story about the squirrel or the chicken, it's both.
But there would have been frustrating situations. There would have been situations where he's got to defend the sheep, wolves, bears, whatever kind of animals they had in Midian that could have been a problem. But his father-in-law, his daughters saw him as an Egyptian, not as an Israelite. He named his son, because he was a stranger in the land. And when you're a stranger in the land, he probably didn't speak the language very well. And he had to learn what their language was. He had the ability to communicate, right? At least enough to chase the shepherds off and get water for the 7 daughters. So, and in doing so, he still showed something about his character. While he murdered that Egyptian because of him beating the Israelite, here he sees these young women being taken advantage of, forced, even though they'd gotten there first, forced to wait while the shepherds, and he didn't see that as a valid thing, so he stood up for them. Mm-hmm. And so in doing so, of course the father's like, hey, why don't you invite him back here?
Yeah, we might need him.
I mean, he helped you guys, why didn't you invite him back? It's like, and so we see that he's able to show and to be. God can redeem our mistakes. His mistake was killing the Egyptian. God redeemed it and allowed him to. Notice this time he chased them off. He stood up, but he didn't kill any of the shepherds. He could have just as easily had continued in that pattern, and it just would have made it worse and worse and worse. This time he stood up for the young ladies, but it doesn't say that he killed anyone.
Not right.
Whereas before somehow he thought, if I kill him, that'll end how's it going to end their troubles? That's one person.
Right, one of many. Yes.
So he at least we don't see him killing the shepherds and continuing kind of in the wrong path.
Lifestyle, It was,
But then God uses this to train him about the area that he's going to lead them through and preparing him. And you know, it's funny because if you think about it, Moses doesn't realize at this point that God's, I got you. And God doesn't go, God could have told him, you know, after you killed the Egyptian and you ran, I helped you stay out of trouble in Midian. And you know all this, you got married, you raised a family, you took care of the sheep for your father-in-law and your sisters-in-law. You know, this was a test. And I'm going to take you and I'm going to have you lead my people out. No, he waits until this moment. Betty, can you read Exodus chapter 3, 5 through 10?
And he said, draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place wherein thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee to Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Boy,
Wow.
come now and I'll send you to Pharaoh. That probably sent shockwaves through him.
It says God's presence and purpose became clear as God called Moses to new path, one of delivering the Israelites from their distress. Yeah, I'm sure that when he mentioned that, I mean, here he comes, he sees that the bush is on fire, and he notices that the bush is not being consumed, so he goes to look at it. Now,
Did I read? Oh, okay.
no, I think this is
Okay.
after.
Okay.
But leading us to this, right? So what happens? Well, just like many of us, he saw something that was curious.
Mm-hmm.
And when he saw the thing that was curious, he went in that direction. And when he got to this certain point, and he said, draw not hither.
Yeah.
Stop where you're at. You are about to come onto holy land.
Yeah.
Take your shoes off.
And you know, it wasn't unusual and we've heard this before, for a bush to burn out there because the desert was hot and everything, but it wasn't being consumed.
Yes.
And that's what drew his
Yes.
attention.
When he first saw that the bush caught on fire, he's like, oh.
Yeah.
But when he looks back and it's still there, he's like, wait a second.
Something wrong here.
This is unique. I need to go over and check this out.
Yes.
And then the voice comes and says, stop. Stop where you're at. Don't come any closer until you take your shoes off, because the land where you stand is holy ground. And then, moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father. Just, if you didn't understand Moses, this is holy ground. Secondly, I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh.
You know, this brings something else to mind. The only realization he had of that was when his mother took care of him until he was probably about 5 years old or whatever.
And his mother taught him.
Because he didn't get any of that information from Egypt.
Yeah, from about 6 to 40 or whatever age he was when he killed the Egyptian. He had nothing but the information that had been provided.
Yes.
Then when he goes to Midian, it says that Midian was a priest, right, in the wilderness. So now he came in contact again.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and isn't that a train up your child in the way they should go
Exactly.
moment?
because when I first started doing preschool, that was years ago, they sent us to classes, and I think one of them, anyway, I don't remember, but they taught us that from before a child's born, they're learning,
Mm-hmm.
and they're learning sounds, and they
Mhm.
recognize their mother's voice and all that, and then the bed babies are learning a lot, even at that age. And you don't think about that. You think that the kids won't learn anything, or you get where they listen to you, you know. But we learned that, and
Yeah.
it was very. I've got a cassette tape that I sat down and sung. I've got like 30 songs for preschoolers. I just sat down and sang them into the tape, and I've still got them in my, you know. I sing to
Really?
Raven, and I've got 3 or 4 songs, and I keep singing them over and over. And pretty soon she'll be singing them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when we're little like that, music is very effective
Oh yes,
in getting thoughts and ideas into our mind.
yes,
And secondly, when we're that age, we're learning how to speak. We're learning how to do things. And a lot of times it starts out as mimicking,
yes,
and then it develops. A child may not have the clear ability to understand and comprehend, but they can mimic and they can begin the process of learning because they do.
and,
Right.
and the repetition is the way they
Yes,
learn.
yes.
I think I told you a couple of weeks ago. I always tell her I love her, and she said the other day, "I love you too." And it just, she probably doesn't understand what she's saying, but
But she loves you
she
too.
loves you too.
But that is part of that process. So here, God through his angel says, this is holy ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I am talking to you. I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in doing so, it says, Moses hid his face. Now, he hid his face for more than likely at least 2 reasons. One, that he was ashamed because he'd killed that Egyptian and he knew that. Secondly, that he had been involved in idol worship
Yeah.
in Egypt because that would have been par for the course for a young man.
Right.
And the awe, the sheer awe of being in the presence of God. But then he tells him, hey, I have surely seen the affliction of my people in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of Egypt, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. And he tells you where the land is, and then come now therefore, and I will send thee. Hey Moses, I'm sending you to Pharaoh.
Say what? Say what?
You don't want? And of course later on, after these verses, we'll get into the whole, well, I don't know how to talk. Oh, I'm not the right person to send type thought process.
Yeah.
But God's already made the selection, so it says God's presence and purpose became clear as God called Moses to a new path, one of delivering the Israelites from their distress. Does part of the reason why Moses was reluctant, is it because of the fact that he tried to relieve the oppression of the Hebrews or the Israelites, but in reality all he did was kill one person and make things worse? Sometimes we don't realize. But is God the one that's giving us the call? Is God the one directing us? Makes a big difference. Imagine that Moses has raised a family, because his son would have been a grown man.
40 years.
He had survived the wilderness, thrived, in the wilderness, and he would have had a better understanding of who Jehovah God was at this point in the process, and how the children of Israel were God's chosen people. So it's very interesting how God needed to get him out. God didn't want him to kill the Egyptian, but once he did and ran, God said, I got this.
Yeah.
I got this. I think I can fix you up.
Uh-huh.
And he straightened him out and got him to a point where he was more understanding. How has God met you in the wilderness? Where have you made a decision to put you in a wilderness and God has met you there and said, hey, I can use you still. You're not too far gone. You can still be used. We hear of people that have fallen by the wayside. We hear of stories, but God tells us that when we accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, we're made into a new creature, a new creation. And when that happens, all those things that are behind us are gone. Here, he was using Moses, getting Moses prepared, toughening him up for what was going to happen next. Because for him to stand in the presence of Pharaoh, he had to know who was more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
If he doesn't know that God is the God of creation, he is the God over everything, how does he stand in the presence of a great king,
Exactly.
of a powerful nation, and speak, let my people go? Because that would be like going into a place and saying, hey, I'm going to take all your workers.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can't do that. I need my workers to do the work. You got to figure something else out and take all of my work. Let your people go.
It's just,
Not easy.
no.
Not easy. Because the children of Israel were the labor force for Egypt.
Right.
There were Egyptians to do the work, but they had not, because much of what they were doing was overseeing the slaves, right? To pull the slaves out was to change all of Egypt's processes. You know,
Yeah.
the Egyptian lifestyle would be much different without the slaves. But it was time. It was time.
But you remember the story of Rahab. She said, we have heard of your God. We have heard. You wonder how much Pharaoh had the same experience. He argued with Moses a long time, but he had heard about God too. Though he didn't believe in him, didn't trust in him, he knew God was powerful. I have to believe that, because if Rahab knew about him, Pharaoh probably knew.
Many of
Yeah.
them. And think about the fact that Joseph, right? So the Pharaoh died that knew Joseph. Another Pharaoh came into power and turned the children of Israel into slaves. There was information that was lost between those two.
Yes, yes.
Because how could Joseph, the Hebrew, who saved Egypt through interpreting the dreams and then carrying forth the vision of, hey, we need to store up food in the 7 good years, so in the 7 lean years we will still be okay. How is it possible that that was lost? That was the God of Israel that did that.
Yeah.
And the children of Israel moved, and then changed, and now they're slaves. Joseph's gone. People that knew Joseph, gone. Now they've become slaves. So they still had an understanding. And he had heard from the people, right? The children of Israel had not given up.
Right.
They were crying out to God to lift this yoke off of them. But you're right. Pharaoh believed he was God.
God was teaching them something too along the way.
Yes. When we make mistakes that cause interruptions in what we think is the path, God can always use those interruptions to teach us something. Just like he taught Moses during that time that Moses was in the desert, right? You still had Miriam, right? and his brother
Aaron,
it's sad that you can't remember things. His brother Aaron were still there.
yeah.
And they were experiencing the things that others were experiencing, but they were trying to do their best at that time under that oppression.
Yeah.
And so when Aaron then becomes his voice, and Moses says, here's what you need to say, that must have been just like, oh, okay, God sent you back. We haven't heard from you
Yeah.
in 40-some years.
Yeah,
Where you been all this time?
didn't even send us a letter. You
But
don't think about that little stuff sometimes.
no, in those connections, imagine, anyone that knew Moses from when this event occurred where he killed the Egyptian, to him walking back in there saying, "Hey, God has sent me to set you free."
Right.
What?
You've been in
So-
the desert too long.
Yes.
How could God use you? You killed somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be our first thought.
And that's probably why we had to wait 40 years for some people to die
Well,
off.
did you read this statement by D.L. Moody?
Yeah, I like that.
That's hilarious. Moses spent his first 40 years thinking he was somebody, his second 40 years thinking he was nobody, and then he spent the third 40 years discovering what God can do with a nobody. And that's been my experience.
Well, and that's, if we think in terms of what is God able to do, God is able to do anything. And God will almost always use a nobody
Yes,
or a somebody that's not important
right,
to do what he needs done.
exactly.
Because when a nobody does a great thing, it helps to point to only through the power of God could this be done.
Exactly.
And sometimes we forget that kind of thing. And we let those, pride can get in the way, but the best way to fix that is to put you in a place where there's no pride. Because you know that you're not able to do it. That's okay. I got you.
Well, in my own experience, I got married when I was 16 because my home life was hard. And that was a bad decision. But at the time, I couldn't see any other decision to make. And when you're 16, you don't think like you do when you're 40.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I can look back and see how God was with me the whole time. Because I got saved when I was 5 years old, and I know that I did. But I didn't have the wisdom, the knowledge to do. And God has turned a lot of bad things in my life around for me.
Absolutely.
And I could just,
Yes.
it's just incredible how He's done that. And I know that He always wanted to, I always felt special, like He wanted me to do something for Him. And consequently, God was able to do something with me all through my life. And I was very insignificant. I was really a nobody. But God has used me in a mighty way, and I'm just grateful to Him. And I don't know how He did it, you know what I'm saying?
In his power,
In
right?
His power. And that's how you learn humility. You learn...
It's not you. He used you,
That's right.
but it was his power.
Yes.
Isn't that
I
awesome?
wouldn't take anything for that experience, even though it was painful and not real pleasant.
But it was forming. It was.
Yeah, I was in the desert.
There you go. Bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for your word, and we thank you for the story. Lord, that you would use us in a mighty way. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.